Hello, my friends. I am so glad you are here today. Wherever you are right now, whatever kind of day you have had, I want you to take a slow breath and let your shoulders relax. Make yourself comfortable. We are going on a journey together. And this one begins not in a classroom, not in a museum, but in a small candlelit room in a town in Italy, more than 500 years ago. Let this story begin. Picture a man sitting alone at a wooden table. Around him are dozens of notebooks, filled edge to edge with drawings, sketches, diagrams, and words written in a direction that most people cannot read. He is designing a flying machine. Not a dream of one, not a poem about one. An actual flying machine, with wings that move like a bird, with measurements and calculations and materials listed in careful detail. It is the year 1490. The Wright brothers, the men who finally built the first real airplane, will not be born for another 360 years. And yet here this man sits, in a room lit by a single candle, drawing a machine that the world will not understand until centuries after he is gone. His name is Leonardo da Vinci, and this is his story. Leonardo was born on the 15th of April, in the year 1452, in a small hilltop town called Vinci, in the Tuscany region of Italy. The name Vinci simply means, the place called Vinci, and it sat surrounded by olive groves and vineyards. The kind of landscape that makes you feel as though time itself moves more slowly there. He was the illegitimate son, meaning he was born outside of marriage, of a man named Ser Piero da Vinci, a successful notary, which is someone who prepares and certifies legal documents, and a young peasant woman named Caterina. Because his parents were not married, Leonardo could not carry his father's full legal name or inherit his professional title. From the very beginning, the world had placed a limitation on him that he had done nothing to deserve. His mother Caterina could not raise him herself. She soon married another man, and the infant Leonardo was given to his father's family to raise. He grew up in the household of his paternal grandparents and his young uncle Francesco, who took a great liking to the curious boy and often walked with him through the Tuscan countryside. It was Francesco who first showed Leonardo how to look carefully at things, at the way water moves over stones, at the structure of a bird's wing, at the patterns insects leave in mud. These early walks planted something in Leonardo that would grow for the rest of his life. Leonardo did not attend a formal university. In 15th century Italy, universities trained lawyers, doctors, and priests, and they taught almost entirely in Latin, the ancient language of scholars. Because of his birth circumstances, and because his early education had been practical rather than classical, Leonardo never mastered Latin. For the rest of his life, some scholars and intellectuals would quietly look down on him for this. They called him an uneducated man, a craftsman rather than a true thinker. Leonardo was aware of this. He wrote in his notebooks, with a quiet defiance, "I know that because I am not a man of letters. Some presumptuous people will think they can reasonably blame me." He did not let it stop him. Instead, he called himself a disciple of experience, meaning he trusted what he could observe and test with his own hands more than he trusted anything written in old books. Think about that for a moment. A young boy, uncertain of his place in the world, who had been given away by one parent and could not fully claim the other, found comfort not in people but in nature. He watched everything. He forgot nothing. Ser Piero recognized that his son was extraordinarily gifted. The boy could draw in a way that seemed impossible for his age. By the time Leonardo was a young teenager, his father brought some of his drawings to a Florentine artist named Andrea del Verrocchio, who was one of the most respected painters and sculptors in all of Italy at that time. Verrocchio looked at the drawings for a long moment. Then he agreed to take Leonardo as an apprentice. An apprentice is a young person who learns a trade or skill by working directly with a master, usually living in their workshop and being paid very little in exchange for their education. But even this opportunity carried a sting. Because Leonardo was illegitimate, certain professional guilds, which were the organizations that controlled who could work in various trades, would never fully accept him. He could not become a notary like his father. He could not practice medicine or law. Art, in a sense, was one of the few doors that remained open to him. And then something extraordinary occurred. Inside Verrocchio's workshop in Florence, Leonardo began to transform. He learned painting, sculpture, metalwork, leather craft, and carpentry. Florence itself was a city on fire with ideas. This was the height of the Renaissance, a word that means rebirth in French, and it described a period when European thinkers, artists, and scientists were rediscovering the knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome, while also pushing far beyond it. The streets of Florence were full of philosophers debating in open air, of merchants who had grown wealthy enough to fund great art, of young men who believed that the human mind could understand almost anything if it tried hard enough. Leonardo absorbed all of it. He was not merely a good student. He was something else entirely. He asked questions that made his teachers uncomfortable. He wanted to know not just how to paint a shadow, but why shadows exist, what light actually is, how the human eye receives it. He began to carry a small notebook with him everywhere he went. He sketched constantly, people on the street, birds in flight, the shape of a cloud moving across the sky. Remember this habit of his. It will return later in a way that changed history. By his early 20s, Leonardo had become one of the most promising artists in Florence. But around 1476, when he was 24 years old, a terrible accusation was made against him. He was anonymously accused, meaning someone made the charge without giving their name, of a crime that in 15th century Florence could result in imprisonment or worse. The accusation was never proven, and he was eventually cleared, but the experience left a mark. He became more private, more careful, more guarded. He had learned that talent is not always enough protection. Around 1482, Leonardo made a decision that surprised many people. He left Florence, the city of his education and early success, and traveled north to Milan to offer his services to Ludovico Sforza, the powerful ruler of that city. Can you imagine that? Leaving behind everything you had built, every connection, every reputation, to start again in a new place. But Leonardo did not go to Milan as simply a painter. He went as an engineer, as a designer of weapons and cities and waterways. He wrote Ludovico a long letter listing not his paintings, but his military inventions. He described machines for attacking walls, for crossing rivers, for digging tunnels under enemy fortifications. Almost at the end of the letter, as if it were almost an afterthought, he mentioned that he could also paint. This was a remarkable choice, and it tells you something important about how Leonardo understood himself. In Milan, Leonardo entered one of the most creative periods of his life. He painted The Last Supper on the wall of a dining hall in a monastery, a painting that would become one of the most reproduced and studied images in human history. He designed canals for the city, planned new neighborhoods, studied human anatomy by obtaining, with great difficulty and at considerable personal risk, the bodies of those who had died, so that he could understand the human body from the inside. He designed a giant bronze horse statue, a project so ambitious that no one had ever attempted its scale before. He studied the flight of birds not as a poet, but as an engineer, filling his notebooks with calculations about wind resistance, wing structure, and the mechanical requirements for human flight. But the world was not finished with him yet. In 1499, Milan was invaded by French forces, and everything Leonardo had built there collapsed. Ludovico Sforza fled the city. The giant clay model of the horse statue, which had taken years of work, was used for target practice by the French soldiers and destroyed. Leonardo packed his notebooks and left. He was 47 years old. With no permanent home, no employer, and a lifetime of extraordinary work that most of the world had not yet seen. Think about what that means. Years of work, destroyed in an afternoon. Think about how you would feel. Think about whether you would start again. Leonardo started again. He spent the following years moving between Italian cities, working for various rulers and patrons, which are wealthy people who pay artists and thinkers to create. He continued his anatomical studies, eventually dissecting more than 30 human bodies and producing drawings of the human skeleton, muscles, and internal organs that were so accurate and detailed that they were not surpassed by medical science for more than 3 centuries. He studied geology, the science of the earth, and correctly understood that fossils found in mountains were proof that those mountains had once been covered by ancient seas. He drew designs for a solar power concentrator, a device to use sunlight as energy. He drew designs for a robot. He drew designs for an armored vehicle, what we would today call a tank. He designed a type of helicopter, a machine that rises straight into the air by spinning large blades. None of these machines could be built in his time. The materials did not exist. The manufacturing processes did not exist. But the ideas were there, recorded in careful detail in those small notebooks he carried everywhere. And then came the day that changed everything about how we understand him. In his later years, Leonardo was invited to France by the young King Francis I, who deeply admired him. The aging Leonardo traveled to the French court and spent his final years in a small chateau called Clos-Lucé, near the king's main palace. Francis reportedly visited him almost every day. He called Leonardo his friend. He said of him, "There has never been another man born in the world who knew as much as Leonardo." Leonardo died there on the 2nd of May, 1519, at the age of 67. He left behind approximately 13,000 pages of notebooks. He left behind fewer than 20 confirmed paintings. Among those paintings is the Mona Lisa, perhaps the most famous artwork in human history. A portrait whose subject seems to return the viewer's gaze, no matter where they stand. A technical achievement that artists and scientists are still studying today. Among those notebooks are the first accurate drawings of a human fetus inside the womb, the first correct explanation of how the heart's valves work, the first detailed sketches of what geology would later call geological stratification, the idea that the layers of rock beneath our feet record the history of the earth across millions of years. He never flew in an airplane. He never saw surgery performed with the anatomical precision his drawings helped make possible. He never saw a tank or a helicopter or a solar panel. He worked in such deep solitude and shared so few of his discoveries that many of his ideas were simply lost for centuries, waiting in the pages of those notebooks for a world that was ready to understand them. That is the human cost of a mind that lives too far ahead of its time. Not triumph, not applause, but solitude, the satisfaction of knowing without being known. The price of genius is often loneliness. Now I want to speak to you directly for a moment, my friend. You are here, listening to this story, learning English, and I want you to understand something. What Leonardo da Vinci did in those notebooks, filling page after page with careful observation, with words and diagrams and questions, with ideas that no one around him fully understood, that is not so different from what you are doing right now. Every time you listen carefully to a sentence and try to hold its meaning in your mind, every time you reach for a word you are not certain of, every time you keep going even when the language feels difficult and far away, you are filling your own notebook. You are recording things the world around you may not yet see. The progress you cannot measure is still happening. The connections your brain is making, quietly, while you listen, are real. Maybe sometimes the words do not come easily. Maybe there are days when English feels impossible. When you wonder why you are doing this. When the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems too wide to cross. Leonardo spent years working on ideas that had no audience. He kept going anyway. Not because the world was ready, because he was. You are doing the same thing. Every word you understand is a small light. Every story you follow to the end is a page turned in your own book. The world that is ready for what you are building may still be ahead of you. But you are building it. I can see it. If something in Leonardo's story stayed with you today, I would love to know which part. Was it the boy who found comfort in watching nature? The man who designed flying machines 500 years before they existed? The notebooks that waited centuries to be understood? Leave your thoughts below. Your words matter here. Keep listening, keep learning, keep going. There are many more extraordinary people whose stories are waiting here, and each one carries something meant for you. This is Talewise English.